Well, hello, and welcome to episode 4 of NSYNC. I'm your host, Indra's Net, and I'm here today with Ike Baker. Ike is an author, lecturer, Masonic historian, and adept of the Golden Dawn tradition. And I'm really excited to have Ike here today as, this show is about synchronicity, hermeticism, healing, magic, and art. And Ike has got a lot going on in the world of esotericism, and we actually have a past history in the art world and stuff. And so I'm looking forward to this chat today because Ike's been doing some cool stuff, and I'm looking forward to hearing about what he's got going on. So welcome, Ike, and maybe do you mind introducing yourself, telling us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. Well, first of all, thanks for having me on. I am looking forward to the chat today. One of the main reasons is because of that sort of shared, paths crossed at some point, definitely on the Long Island music scene, probably 2015, 12 years ago. I don't know, but we're close to the same age. We were going to the same pop-up hardcore shows and things like that. So that's really interesting when I bump into people like that. So I'm looking forward to that. That's also something that like I don't get to talk about that. It's not even that I want to all the time, but this is the right time, you know? But I mean, in terms of magic, my favorite magicians are always not intentionally, but they always end up being musicians, like inclined towards music. I think that magic and music, they work like you're working primarily out of a similar type of consciousness. People who are more inclined to espouse a physical materialist view would probably say like it's stimulating similar parts of the brain. So there's that's very interesting to me. But I kind of found the Golden Dawn by accident on Long Island. And I've told this story a few times. So for anybody that's heard it before, bear with me. But at this point in my life, I've been in the Golden Dawn for I think a little over a decade. And I before then I was practicing Golden Dawn style magic. And then before that, I was studying Vedic philosophy. I did Zazen meditation under a Roshi when I was going to school in upstate New York for a little while. I was about 18 or 19. But now, I'm an administrator and I'm an adept in the tradition. I run the North Carolina temple here. I'm like you say, a Masonic historian and lecturer. I travel all over the country to Masonic lodges to speak. I host international scholarly conferences on occultism. It's called the Hermopolis Symposium. Myself and Dr. Mervat Abdel Nasser host that in Egypt at her new Hermopolis Eco Village, and it's been an incredible thing. And I host also the Southeastern Masonic Symposium at the Asheville Masonic Temple every year. So I stay busy. I stay really involved, but. Growing up on Long Island and not really, I didn't know much about the occult. I didn't come from that world. So the esotericism that I gravitated towards, particularly coming out of Roman Catholicism, uh, was like Dan Brown occultism, like esotericism, where it's something about the Templars and the Freemasons and the blood of Jesus, so, things like that. What's the Kabbalah sort of thing? But it started at a really early age because I actually recently was going through some of my. I keep these little time capsules that I just stick shit in and close, and I don't open it up again for another 15 years. And I found a bunch of notebooks even recently showing that, like, wow, I was studying Gnosticism. I found my comparative religion notebook from my freshman year in college, and I was really just studying Gnosticism, Aristotle, Plato, all these things that I talk about at length now. Um, and I just kind of forgot that I've been doing it that long. But I still didn't really, even at that early stage, I didn't know what magic was. I thought like other people because the word occult contains the word cult. I thought it was associated with Satanism and cult, sort of these little strange cults of personality. So I didn't really pay much attention to it. Uh, One day, my aunt, she used to live in Smithtown, and they had a big house, 3 stories. They had a basement apartment, below ground apartment, and they rented it out to this woman. And she was really nice, really quiet. She threw herself in front of a train, and so my aunt said, "Look, I went down into the apartment, and it turns out this woman like was hoarding books. They're just books, notebooks, books, just all sorts of books."
Ooh.
And anybody that has moved with books knows that they're like it's like deceptively heavy when you put that in a box and try and like you fill the box and then you're like I can't lift this. So my aunt was like, "Hey, would you and your buddy mind my best friend at the time who was interested in this kind of comparative religion angle with me, would you mind coming over and help me move these books?" And I said, "Okay." So I get there and we're moving stuff around, and it really is like it's almost overwhelming, the stacks and the aisles and stuff. And so, but I see this one book cover and the design, I still have it. It's right across from me on the bookshelf across from me. I see this one, the cover of one book, and I grab it, and it's called it was called the Oracle of Kabbalah by a guy named Richard Seidman. And I said, "They're a little weird, but do you mind if I take this?" And my aunt's like, "Sure." There's no next of kin she could get in touch with, so she's going to donate all this stuff anyway. So, uh, it's a very thin book. I take it, I walk around my neighborhood, in Babylon, North Babylon in New York and in Long Island, and I finish it in a day, just walking around. And now I wasn't any more educated on Kabbalah than I was beforehand, but something was ringing in me, right? Where I was like, this is important somehow. So I went on the yellow pages or the white pages when we used to do that on the internet, and it's a little, showing my age now, but um, I type in Long Island Kabbalah Study Group because I just wanted to make contact with community that I could learn this stuff with. And got a guy's information, his phone number and his email. I reached out and he got back to me and said, that group doesn't meet any longer, but there's this other thing. And the other thing was the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn, which I didn't know what it was. When they explained to me what it was, I couldn't help but like, I got like this weird sensation where I was simultaneously intrigued, simultaneously kind of every cell of my body perked up, like listening, like antennas. And then I was also like repulsed at how absurd that idea sounded. And there was a short courtship period. I met them at this spot called the Silver Broom in Sayville, New York. Um, Actually, I ran into Daryl from Glassjaw there a couple of times.
Funny.
But
My buddy was their drum tech for a while too.
way back in the day.
Yeah.
He had just had a baby, actually, I think. But we met there, and I didn't. I didn't. I had them get me all set up, and I was a no call, no show for my first initiation. Total millennial flake, typical bullshit. And
Mm.
it was just something in me that was like, what do these people think they're doing? They didn't do like Harry Potter wand waving shit. That's insane. So I went and I continued playing music and touring and going on the road. And I was still a young kid. I was like 19 years old. And, got addicted to drugs and lived this crazy lifestyle. And my fucking life just it ended up falling apart. It just fell to shit, like full collapse. And that bell started ringing again, like despite myself. And I was like just all cloistered up at my mom's house in North Babylon. I was walking around the park, Belmont Park, and the horse trails there, like for months, no job, nothing. I was like in a total state of destitution and depression.
Negredo, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I just kind of gave up at that point. But then a voice in my head kind of was like, "Listen, you got to go back, hat in hand, to these people. You have to do this." And I was nervous, right? Like how the fuck am I going to show face here? And I ended up reaching out, and they did give me a second chance, and I initiated, and the rest is kind of history. So, a roundabout kind of, flirtation in the beginning and then finally, through the foreplay to the main event, as they say. So, yeah, I mean, that's how I came to it. And it was all on Long Island.
It's so cool, man. It's really fascinating to hear, from another person who, kind of came up, in the scene and has come to initiation and esotericism. I did similarly myself, and I would say how for you, would you say that like your movement into magic, is it safe to say that like that calling to art, it sounds like you're already putting it that way, but that like there's a very similar um culture to both things, right? Like it's like I feel like those of us that are called to magic are often involved in art in some form or another too, and like I think it's um to help even demystify magic for people, like would you say that did you feel like your life changed much moving from an artist into a magician or um like what would you say about that consideration,
It's a different kind of art, right? I mean,
Mhm.
they do call it the magical arts. And
Right, the royal art, right?
because there's like music, there are rules. And these rules are basically called techniques. It's the same thing. When I was learning the drums, I played rudiments. I played paradiddles and six-stroke rolls and all sorts of rudiments that were training me to eventually not have to think about what I was doing. And so what happens is in that early stage of playing music, and I'm assuming it would be similar to like going to fine arts school as well, where you're understanding composition, you're learning kind of the fine motor skills to be able to utilize your tools. You're learning how to mix colors and things like this. You're learning all that, and it's all very rudimentary, and it can be very boring. But the key there is this: you think you're training to be a musician, the thing that plays, the entity that plays. What all of that training does is it enables you to not have to think about what you are doing so that you have access immediately to a vocabulary that is also stylistic so that you end up not in those beautiful states, and I know you know what I'm talking about, in those beautiful states when you zone in and everything's perfect, the chemistry, the timing, you are open enough, you're not making the music, you are what's being played. And that
Yeah,
can
yeah.
only happen if you learn what the fuck you are doing. Otherwise, you're gonna be sitting there trying to muscle through it the whole time. Wow, wasn't that great? And then people are like, yeah, it was a little loud, and like, or you're a little slow, you're a little fast. It's those, and we call those moments like magic, right? When that
Exactly,
happens,
exactly.
the magician has to strive for the same thing. So at first, it's fucking boring, But
Mhm.
the thing is, there are interesting things, right? Like when I was going to school for music, I started in like I'd say like sixth grade or something, fifth grade with the drums. And the coolest thing about it was that I'd get called out of class to go to lessons. So I wouldn't have to sit through like music or math or English, and I'd get an excuse to go to the drum section of the band, the middle school band or whatever, would get called for lessons, and we'd go over the part where we have to play, right? So that was the coolest thing about it. But like the work itself was rough. It was embarrassing. There were a lot of kids that had been playing a lot longer than me, and you're all jockeying for who's going to play snare drum and who. I got stuck with the fucking cymbals, and you just kind of like, this kind of sucks, and it's tough, and you muscle through it. God knows why. I'm pretty sure it was for girls in my case. And then, finally you start to get out there into what's going on outside of school, outside of your lessons, and you go into this community. And it was very similar in magic. You enter into a community, it really was like something out of Harry Potter, where like I didn't had no idea this world existed. And not only does it exist, they're all around me, these people, and there's really no way of telling that, it was very rare back then that somebody would, would appear flamboyant enough to kind of be able to out them as a magician, especially, where we're from. So
Hmm.
that was what kind of staved off the very rote kind of lesser banishing ritual, middle pillar. But then once the juice started happening and things started kicking in, and I had been in the Golden Dawn for about 8 months at that point. Once I started feeling the energy move through my body because remained committed. And the only reason remained committed is because I had developed a discipline being a musician. And so I knew, look, it doesn't matter, right? It's like what Mozart said. If I waited for inspiration, I wouldn't finish anything. Sit at the fucking instrument every day.
Yeah.
Some days are going to
Hmm.
suck. You're going to feel like, why am I doing this? Other days you're going to zone out. It's all part of the maintenance. It's all part of the program. And so I was able to transfer that discipline over to the basic techniques that you learn and the rote memorization of all the curriculum and material you get in the Golden Dawn, which is voluminous. And then
Hmm.
eventually, yeah, I mean, magic stopped. It went from being something I did or was trying to do to what I became. I was that. I do that naturally. It's the same concept, and there's a lot of crossover. And one of the areas where people who don't that haven't cultivated or gotten in touch with, and in any profound sense, engaged with the part of themselves that is artistic and develop that, they struggle more than people who are artistic most of the time. And I'll tell you why. It's because when you're everything you learn in an art, from the tools to the know-how, none of it's discursive, none of it's language. Like I mean, maybe literature, sure, but you're creating things out of your mind. That's an art form. You're opening up to receive ideas. Many of the best writers say that the characters came through them. They didn't make them up.
Oh.
And it's the same thing with visual arts. We are used to people who and I think everybody has the potential to be creative. I think one of the most dangerous things about being a musician is this elitism of thinking like, oh, I'm this guy who can do this. Not many people. Everyone can do it.
Mhm.
It's just something in our lives was uncomfortable enough for us to say, I want to keep doing this, even though I suck. I sucked for 10 years and I kept doing it. Right.
Hmm.
So,
Hmm.
um, that is people who actually go through and develop that, they are become used to expressing themselves without regular, like normal discursive word heavy thinking. I can, and that's the beautiful thing about music, right? Like I can tell you all about the blues, I can tell you all about heavy metal, but you we're going to be having the same words with a different dictionary that whole time. However, if I play you the blues, you will feel what I felt.
Right.
And so there's a communication there that does not need words. And so it pulls you out of discursive reasoning, being chained to this sequence of logic that ultimately, if you're stuck in that paradigm and trying to do magic, you will fail.
Mhm. Wow, yeah, I love that, man. I really resonate with everything you just said because, as a fellow person who, you know, I've been on the magical path since I was about 18. I guess it's been 20 years. And yeah, I started early, practicing with Golden Dawn stuff and, eventually moved into Crowley stuff. And, I eventually ended up in an AA lineage and spent a couple of years in there. And I worked really diligently on that path, up to the Zealot grade. And eventually life changed and just life changed and moved and I still walk the path and I still practice the discipline, but I'm not necessarily in a lineage right now. But I can say that same thing that um that you nailed so beautifully is that like as humans, like we really are instruments, you know what I mean? And like to be to become yourself is to learn how to play your instrument, and first you got to know, what your instrument is, and that's what's so beautiful about the magical path and the path of the neophyte work that you do in all these grade work systems where you come to know the elements of your being. And I feel like that's just something I want to highlight, as like feels like 2026, there's a lot of magic in the air. I've never seen more Gnosticism on my Instagram feed and more common people even in the music scene are starting to get hip to more magical stuff. And so like it's exciting to be able to be more open about my magical life, even, as an artist, like um it's always felt a very real part of myself and my path, but that like it's in this year it's a lot more common to be able to be like, yes, I'm a musician and a magician. You know what I mean? And it's great to see that like folks like you are releasing works like your work you're releasing right now, like I noticed you just released a piece called was it Etheric Magic was one of your late releases?
Yeah, so my last book was yeah, I did Etheric Magic with Lou Ellen, and then before that was my first sort of solo piece that I wrote myself called A Formless Fire.
Mm.
And I did that with Tria Prima Press, which is a small Masonic imprint out of Arizona. So now I've got a new book coming out on inner traditions called Esoteric, excuse me, Esoteric Mythology. So I'm trying to get everything kind of that I'm interested in and that I've spent, like yourself, 20 years fleshing out, developing, understanding. I want to get it out there because one of the reasons I came on the scene is because I did notice, right? Frankly, there are many days when I kind of would be much happier just doing my work privately with my group, and forsaking the whole talking head thing. But then I remember
Mm.
why I ended up doing this, and it's because I realized that, yeah, it's getting popular. The people that are doing it or trying to do it are getting younger and younger. And
Mm.
like the problem is that most of us, at least at first, we're trying to understand the esoteric with our exoteric minds. We have
Mm.
these almost kind of fucking factory installed settings that they serve as a kind of like a, contact lenses we don't know we're wearing. And so we're constantly approaching magic through this reductionist, materialist, kind of pretty much nihilistic framework where it's like, this is cool, this is novel,
Mhm.
it's
Mhm.
countercultural, and I want to identify with it. Because as consumers, that's what we do. Is we don't
Mhm.
many most of us don't have to learn how to be something. Rather, we spend all our lives trying to seem some way. That becomes dangerous if you believe in magic. Because if you believe in the things, the powers within magic, then you understand things are at stake. Real
Mhm.
things are at stake. And so then there becomes a right and a wrong way. Or let's put it this way, a safe and less safe way to practice magic. And so, being in these communities, having the experience that I have, I felt like, what are we doing? We're sitting here holding on to this, fucking patting ourselves on the belly. Aren't we great? Ha ha ha. In these small rooms of adepts just sitting there and talking about, temple seeding and all sorts of shit. And it's like, look, like there's shit going on. We should probably get out of the dugout, and get
Yeah,
onto the fucking field
yeah.
here.
Yeah,
So
absolutely. Yeah.
that's kind of why I do what I do, and a lot of people would find that preachy, but fuck them.
No, dude, I mean, honestly, I've been waiting to for these moments, to be honest. Like when I was a young person coming to spirituality myself, like it was like, I actually kind of had like it was like a near-death experience and synchronicity thing that happened for me. And it was a lot of that like immediately made me have to inspect my humanity, at a younger age than some other folks, you know what I mean? And like, so that, put me on the path early. And I've always had that same attitude that I love that you just shared, that it's like, we're in a new age, we're in a different time than when we had to keep these secret societies so secret. You know what I mean? In fact, I feel like at this point, we really need to have almost the opposite thing where it's like we've got to open all the way outward to to help grab the reins of and have like an activated present human culture. You know what I mean? And like that, doesn't mean everyone's gonna do that, but that there's a lot better hope for humanity when we've got this light, available and not so scary for people to come toward. You know what I mean?
Yeah, well, and that's the thing. I felt like that our hand was forced because, like, I looked at the other adepts, and some of them were supportive, and others of them were like, "What are you doing on YouTube?" And
Mhm.
that's fine because you need somebody to come and check you, right? I mean, you don't want to just
Mhm.
say, "I'm going to do what I'm going to do." Impunity. You want the right people, right? People that you
Mhm.
trust, people that are your mentors, to be able to come and offer their. I don't want everybody's opinion on the internet. I don't care, But these people I work with, sure, but
Mhm.
you know. I said, look at this. You take them on Reddit forums, the 16-year-old kids doing goetic magic and shit like blood sacrifice. And I'm just kind of like, they're doing this anyway. So like what our hand is forced. You got to step in. Like I know I'm not going to change people's minds in 2026. I know that. But
Mhm.
what I'm hoping to do is be the guy on the side of the road with a fucking sign that's pointing to the alternate route because the bridge is out. And whoever sees me and wants to listen and get off at the last exit, they will do so.
Hmm. Well, that's great to hear, man. Yeah, I really love to hear that because like it feels like it is the time, to just to be who we are, as artists, as people, as magicians, and it's like it does feel like, like in this country, this part of the world we're in, like um everything's not ever been perfect all the time, but that like this is a space where we can truly like create like new um open territory in terms of our culture and how grounded we are in principles of truth and these like higher principles that we used to have to hide from forces that had a little more power, and like we got to watch out because we're seeing the way that obviously like the environment's very shifty right now, you know
Yeah.
what I mean? And like
Yeah.
and it feels like yeah, it just feels beautiful to know that like those of us that have been called into the mysteries and the mystery schools and stuff are feeling this openness and like I'm really excited to reading your book Formless Fire because like I feel like that's got to be pretty cool, if it describes some of your journey into this stuff because like a lot of people right now in 2026 they're just starting to look at magic and Freemasonry with all suspicion, and I remember being that way when I was like 17 and just
Yes.
starting to get a little freaked out, so I think it's really great that there's people like us out here just kind of like just radiating it, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, I mean, and A Formless Fire was written. It's effectively the history, theory, and practice of the Western esoteric traditions. So
hmm
I go as far back as ancient Mesopotamia because that's about as far back as the historical record can go in the West. When we're talking about the ultimately the collection of religious beliefs of the ancient Sumerians, Mesopotamia, the broader Mesopotamian, and the Egyptians. These were religious beliefs, and that informed the what would become esotericism and the occult. So I go and I cover. If you want to read a chapter on astrology, if you want to learn about astrology, that's a chapter in astrology. You want to learn about alchemy, there's a chapter on alchemy. You want to learn about, but I connect them. I weave them together so that you can't. It's very difficult to write about these things, chronologically. So what I did was I tie them together as I separate them. So I'm trying to show how this stuff developed so that this was specifically written for the newcomer or somebody's been doing this but for a bunch of years but does not know, like, we're in a glut of information. There's so many competing opinions, information, right? This is, I'm focusing on the fact that, look, we only have magic because of the initiatory traditions, right? Samuel Mathers translates the Abramelin. Okay. Samuel Mathers does all that translation. Crowley takes it, takes
yeah.
777, which was an inner memorandum, a notebook of correspondences that they were collecting, and he publishes it. And Crowley,
Yeah.
I'm not a huge fan of Crowley, but
Mm-hmm.
he served his part for history for sure,
Mm-hmm.
on the stage of things, of pieces on that chessboard that needed to be moved. He did what he had to do. So,
Mm-hmm.
these people were not solo practitioners. They were in initiatory orders. And so, what's the
Mm-hmm.
purpose of initiation? the development of the soul, which we call
Yeah.
theurgy. Not, I'm going to call a demon and go and get me a girlfriend or something like that.
Right.
That's not the tradition. As a matter of
Yeah.
fact, a lot of people would freak out if they knew that the grimoires they're using were actually written by priests, Catholic priests. In the Middle Ages, they'd be like,
Right.
yeah, they'd throw it right out. But so I wanted to attempt as best I could to create a resource that will thoroughly ground and educate people on where this comes from, what the theory is behind it, right? Because that's the best we can do in life is have theories. That's how science is supposed to work, but it doesn't. And then I gave the practice. So it comes with 9 appendices filled with practice with my commentary, everything from making, consecrated water and incense, the preparation of a spideric tincture, which I co-wrote with the great alchemist Dan Wiseman, who runs Secret Fire Apothecary. I've got the lesser banishing ritual of the pentagram, the middle pillar, all sorts of very familiar ritual stuff as appendices so that the back of the book you can actually start to work some of the stuff we've been talking about, for 300 some odd pages. And so I really love that book. And one of my mentors who brought me into this kind of, wider public scene, Jamie Paul Lamb, the great Masonic astrologer, he um, he wrote the forward to the book, and he was the one who actually, he kind of put the idea for me to start writing books in my head. So he was a great support, and so that book is very very special to me. And yeah, and Etheric Magic has been a breakout success, I would say. It's been translated into different languages at this point. It's people reach out to me from all over the world telling me about like the book clubs they're doing with it, the study groups. So that's been really really cool too.
Wow. That's great, man. Yeah. I'm looking forward to checking all that stuff out. And can people just find those books like on Amazon and stuff like that? It's like all readily available, or is it do you have like maybe a personal site how people can reach you or
Yeah, I have links to buy my books at ikebaker.com, ikebaker.com. Everything is up there. Like I've got blog posts up there. I haven't updated that in a long time, but they're up there if you want to read some blog stuff. The last documentary presentation I made for my YouTube channel, Arcanum, Arcanvm. That you can stream that right from my Ike Baker website. I've got my latest 3 podcast episodes. I do a podcast. I bring guests on and talk to the foremost authorities in the scholarship of this stuff, the practice of this stuff, all sorts. And all of that's up there. And there's a little chat widget in the bottom right hand corner of the screen. Whatever you type in there goes to my personal inbox. So if you want to reach out, you can. If you're not nice, I'm not going to respond. So, but if you do want to reach out and touch base, please do feel free and just give me some time to get back to you.
Oh yeah, that's really cool. Yeah, I wanted to ask you too, because I've got a bunch of exciting guests lined up for this season, but one of them is Damien Eccles, who has a book coming out soon. And he was commenting when we dropped the promo for this episode that I should ask you about the wand that you made him.
Yeah.
What's this fun story that I gotta hear?
Yeah. Well, Damien's the man, and I've been reading his books for a really long time too. But his latest book, actually, it's in the mail, and it's called The Alchemy of the Broken Blade. And I'm really, really looking forward to diving into it because we have a shared background, which is in martial arts and esoteric sort of Taoist approach to this stuff. Damien was one of the early champions of etheric magic because I took the Eastern sort of energy work modalities and applied them to Western Kabbalah and alchemy and tried my best to make a system that would work for the Western practitioner without having to sort of rely on yoga, rely on Tai Chi and this kind of stuff. But so Damien really loved it, and he helped. He did a book club with his people with the book. But I was introduced to Damien by a mutual friend of ours, TJ Bell, who's an alchemist and another musician, another fantastic musician. This is his alchemy company, Black Earth Alchemy, and he runs a place called Black Earth Magical Cafe in Old Forge, Pennsylvania. I recently gave a presentation there. Mark Stavish, Robert
Oh,
Allen,
hey.
Robert Allen Bartlett, like gave did an alchemy class there. So, um, what TJ's cultivating actually out there in the middle of Pennsylvania is this esoteric salon that I think has the potential to be historic eventually. So TJ introduced me and Damien. He just thought that we should know each other, and me and Damien hit it off right away. And we still talk to him almost every day on Instagram and stuff like that. But uh, just a great dude because he's like fun to talk to. Not all these people are fun to talk to. Like some of them are so fucking serious. It's just like part of being an adept and doing this for like 20 years is that you stop taking everything so seriously. You
Right.
kind of like you don't have this idea of what the movies and television told you a developed person is supposed to look like. That's
Mhm.
gone. Same thing with
Right.
music, right? But I was in Greece at I went to the archaeological site of Plato's Academy. All right, and I found this place for the first time. I've been going to Greece since I was 7 years old because I'm Greek. I have a Greek family, so I usually go there in the summers. But I wanted to find where Plato's Academy was, where they actually met. And believe it or not, at that time in like 2014, 2015, nobody there could tell me. They kept sending me to the wrong spot. I had to use the coordinates on Wikipedia, take the underground, the subway, and then walk. So I go there with my fiance at the time, who's now my wife, and I'm, taking pictures. I send it to Damien and to TJ, and Damien's like, "Don't leave there without getting dirt." Like because you use it magically, and I'm like, "Oh yeah, no shit.
Yeah, right.
Thank you so much for reminding me or making me think that thought." And
Mhm.
so I scoop up some dirt, and then I realize I'm like, I'm gonna I'm gonna take some wood back. I'm gonna pull some branches off of some of these trees and I cut them. And I stuck them in a duffel bag, and I knew immediately like I'm gonna make wands out of these. I ended up getting them home, and uh, and I made three wands that I sent out. And one of the people who got them was Damien. And I've been making wands for a long time. I don't really advertise that. I don't sell them to people anymore. There's a place in Asheville called Raven and Crone that used to sell my wands. I just kind of sell them in bulk wholesale, and I'd get a check, and then whenever they got rid of them, they got rid of them. But it's like a Zen thing for me, and it was really special to be able to do that with wood from Plato's Academy. And
That's amazing.
yeah, and so I did it up. Stained it, I sanded it, or sanded it first, then stained it. I set it into a handle, and I wrapped copper wire around it. It was a really good looking piece, and I was a little jealous that Damien was getting it, and I didn't get to hang out. But I'm like, no, you got to send it. You got to do the right thing and send it. And he opened it up. He opened up the box. He sent me a picture, and he was like, dude, I would have been happy with the fucking stick. This is awesome. So. So it was yeah, it was really, I try to think of other people when I get to do cool shit.
Yeah, that's some cool stuff, man. That's like yeah, that's really special. And I'm looking forward to having Damien on. It seems like he's been doing a lot of great work. He was just doing some workshops here in the Hudson Valley at Omega.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's been pretty cool. It's cool to see him doing so much. I'm looking forward to catching up with him. So I wanted to also talk to you because part of what the this podcast is about, it's about like synchronicity and about yeah, hermeticism, magic, and I talk a lot about movies and like, something that I love to do is, like with, deepening our gnosis, like every time the sun moves into a different sign, like my perception enriches with the sign, you know what I mean? And I've been having a lot of fun, like kind of sharing some of the things that I see when we're moving through the seasons and in the movies and stuff. And I know you saw some movies recently, but would you say that are there any movies this summer that like have really hit for you, like magically, that you'd like to celebrate, or even just, in the past couple of years, if not this summer,
Yeah, I mean, when I was a musician, I used to tell people I kicked myself in the ass every day for not going to film school. I don't I don't think that anymore, because I realize what that entails. When you graduate, you get a couple of $1,000 to go make a movie, and if it flops, you're fucked. So I'm like, thank God
Yeah.
that I didn't go that route. But that's to say that I love film.
Mm.
Film is incredible, but I agree with Plato, right? Now, Plato wasn't talking about film, he was talking about arts in general. It can be dangerous when people offer you something that is pleasing, something that might even be beautiful, but isn't true.
Hmm.
Because then what we do is we welcome and absorb the untruth. And then when you apply that philosophy, like I did, you crash and burn. Okay, so film can be dangerous to me. I think most people underestimate incredibly to like an absurd degree. They underestimate how their interior and therefore their exterior lives are influenced by the movies that they watch. There, and this is all part of esotericism. You're told when you begin initiation, begin to curate your mental diet. Okay, you must guard the west gate of the mind. And that this is the thing, same way you're supposed to, right? You put shit into your physical body, you get shit out. And I don't just mean in the digestive system. I mean you become what you eat, and it's really we know that by now. It's the same thing with the mental diet. So part of my practice when I initiated was to lay all of these art forms on the altar of sacrifice. I quit music. I stopped watching TV. I got rid of my phone. I got a flip phone. Actually, for like a year, I didn't have a phone. Got off of social media. I completely went like what most people was a fucking normal person in the 90s, and even early 2000s. Now it's just kind of like, oh, just telling people what I did clearly gives them anxiety. There's like a thin layer of sweat on their foreheads when I'm like, I didn't have a phone for 5 years, like, so I did that, and what we would call is kind of clear out the sphere of sensation. Um, and so, I did end up getting back into certain films. I'm very, very deliberate with what I will watch, very, very deliberate with what I will listen to. Okay, these aren't things where it's like, oh man, like fuck, I got like I don't know, Nirvana or Soundgarden or like early era Metallica in my head. I'm gonna go and listen to it. It's like no, I know it's not time for junk food right now. Like there's different
Hmm.
things that I need to do with my mind today. Instead of just
Hmm.
like get my blood pressure up and get like a cheap thrill from this music. Nostalgia too can be not good at
Hmm.
any given time. So
Wrong.
this is how this is what an initiate does. Now, I mean, even if you read Crowley, he was cutting himself with a fucking razor if he like, what I'm saying? Like if he dropped his
Yeah.
posture, to say that initiates don't do this, you clearly don't know what the fuck initiation is.
Right.
Like we are extreme people that are
Mm.
trying to bring ourselves back to the middle, but we live in an extreme society. All that said, I watched the Odyssey recently, okay? Because the
Hmm.
Odyssey is very near and dear to my heart, not only because I'm Greek, but because it was used as a religio-philosophical text. Some scholars will disagree. I don't really give a shit because it's very clear when you look at the late Platonic scholars, specifically Porphyry, Proclus, Iamblichus, they're all interpreting the Homeric epics in the light of metaphysics and theology and claiming that Homer, whether he was a person or a group of people, we don't know, uh, was kind of creating a symbolic architecture that was communicating esoteric truths. And to a greater or lesser extent, I mean, their interpretation of what he did in the Odyssey, what was written in the Iliad, and how it relates to initiation and theory, really the mystery traditions at that time. That's what modern initiatory societies are. They're an evolution, an outgrowth, it's like an escape pod that just kind of had to like evolve and develop out of the mysteries into a society that like you can't have. mystery schools anymore. It's got to be something else. It's more guerrilla style now. But anyway,
Mhm.
so I had to go and see the Odyssey, and I went with an open mind, as I do with most films. I don't expect anything because that's what happens when you approach art and you have preconceived notions. You're going to miss the fucking point. And I've got a lot of people who liked it, a lot of people who didn't understand it, a lot of people who didn't like it. And all of the criticisms of those who didn't like it are the same. You get people who say where it's like the casting is artificially diverse, and other people who are scholars who are like they don't give a shit about this quote unquote culture war. They're just like he didn't do the Odyssey exactly the way I wanted to see it. He missed this part and that part. I'm like, it would have been a fucking miniseries if he, so the Odyssey has always been adapted and used as a backdrop for the Romans, even for later Greeks. And I want to point this out. In the last few film adaptations of either the Iliad or the Odyssey, there's a scene that is inserted in both of them when Agamemnon, right, the Greek war chief who's leading all these guys there because his brother's wife got stolen or ran away, he sacrifices his daughter, Iphigenia, okay? Iphigenia, all right? Sacrifices the child. That's not in the Iliad. That's not in the Odyssey. It's a later addition in later Greek periods. So what's happening there? In the original, Agamemnon was more noble. But as certain Greek societies, Athenian democracy kind of, you know, feminized that initially brutal impulse of the Mycenaeans, they grew to view some of that stuff as distasteful. And so they created this backstory that like Agamemnon wasn't noble. He sacrificed his daughter. So like now, like scholars are perfectly fine with that shit going on in the ancient world. But when Christopher Nolan changes the story to fit his narrative, they don't like it. You know why? Because it's new. And scholars, their entire identity is predicated on I know what's old. I know the old shit. I know what's, and to them, older is always synonymous with better. And as a
Mhm.
practitioner, you know that that's not true. That
Right.
that we work in that ancestral tradition, but if it's not a living, evolving tradition, it belongs in a fucking museum, as Indiana Jones would say. It
Right,
belongs
right.
behind a glass case. I
Mama.
loved it. I saw the Odyssey as a Trojan horse. I'm not going to go into details, but I think that Christopher Nolan created a Trojan horse with that movie, which is one of the most meta fucking things I've ever seen anybody do with with
Uh-huh.
with that storyline. And I think that compare this Odyssey movie with the original Odyssey is like comparing the Trojan horse with a physical horse. It's not meant, it's not meant to be the same thing. You're missing the fucking point. So I
Uh-huh.
really enjoyed it. Now, I think a lot of his messaging was socio-political, which is important at this time. I don't
Mhm.
get involved in politics because those things bore me, and I also think they missed the point. But
Mhm.
even though well-meaning, um,
Mhm.
but this movie, and I can't tell you why yet, because I don't know. It was very recent.
Mhm.
It made me feel something spiritual for the first time in a long time via the arts.
Mhm.
Okay, this was the first time I was sitting watching something, anything, and I felt that stirring in me, that numinous awakening, something very, very lightly, gently kind of got a little brighter. Uh, that was my experience with it, and I'm happy. I'm happy because to be honest, like I didn't have expectations, but I didn't know if I was gonna like. I wasn't dead set on liking it, and it just yeah, I guess it played the right note for my taste.
Man, right on. Yeah, I like that because it is I've had a pretty similar relationship with media throughout my whole life. Actually, it was a pretty transformative experience for me. The way I came back to media was after my like spiritual awakening and my step onto the mystical path, because like I'd like dropped out of high school and wanted to travel and to try to get like, just like a real raw experience of reality, that kind of romantic youthful thing, you know what I mean? And and I went out on that kind of journey. And then I learned I didn't really want to live out on the road and do that whole bohemian thing. You know what I mean? But I did have to go do it to learn I didn't want it. You know what I mean? And then when I came back, but it was like in that whole lifetime that I spent in that kind of like traveling, very organic, just floating around, exploring and meeting people of the earth all around the country and stuff, like I came back and I had a spiritual awakening thing. And then when I started watching films, I was watching them in a totally different way than I'd ever seen them before, and suddenly my punk attitude of like, ugh, screw all media and like ever, like I suddenly was like, whoa, there's like something way deeper than like greed going on underneath all this stuff sometimes, and so that's been like a liberatory experience for me in my life to like to come to art in a new way. And but at the same time, I really still hold that very same critical and, like you said, very kind of like careful attitude toward consuming media. You know what I mean? Like, um, even in the way that I consume media now, it's like I do it to almost like alchemically extract gold. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
And and it's almost only in that way that I actually am comfortable really like celebrating any of it. You know what I mean?
yeah.
But
And
but
that
it's
makes
it's
perfect sense.
yeah, like it's like it feels like there's always something about art that, it's coming through the human soul. And even like you were saying that movie moved you and it hit the right notes. Like it is beautiful when a current artist just somehow transmits the moment to you, and it moves, it moves because it's made by the human heart. And it like, like if someone is really in the heart, then the art will hit, you know what I mean? And like,
Yeah, yeah. And
um,
that's the thing, like people either don't think that the Odyssey should be sacrificed for a message or they don't like the message. But here's the thing. Whoever who set that message into that movie, we know it was Chris Nolan for the most part. You could feel that he believed in it, that it was sincere. And the sincerity made it kind of hit those notes, like, okay, this is
mhm,
real. Like, whatever the undercurrent of this, obviously, people don't even understand. I took a few screenwriting classes. Okay. I read a lot of David Mamet. I used to get the long form director's cut DVDs with director commentary behind the scenes. I was so interested in film. And most people have no fucking idea. They just can't even the amount of architecture that goes
oh,
into crafting. Every fucking word is scrutinized. Every word. It's you don't just sit there and say like I have an idea and you start typing it out like there's a whole team of people that review this shit. There's processes, there's all sorts of considerations. Making a movie is one of the most complex and multifaceted, multi-stage crafts that there are, much more so
mhm,
than music. So it's like because there's a lot of money at stake, and it's this if this like really hits, you could influence society in major ways. It's like the movies and television are like the sole repository of popular opinion, and have been.
oh,
We've never had anything like that before. That's why it's also the flip side of the coin is that it's dangerous potentially. So,
mhm,
so there's tons of messaging in movies. And to your point, my next book, Esoteric Mythology, discusses exactly this. What is this? What is this thing that makes things universally beloved?
mhm,
It's not, when it's real, it's not just popular opinion. It's like, what is that je ne sais quoi, that unnameable quality that makes something timeless? How the fuck does the Odyssey, how did the Iliad and the Odyssey make it, from the late Bronze Age? How does that story make it to today where
right,
we're sitting there picking it apart, arguing with each other on the internet?
mhm,
Like these are the problems we have, thank God, but
right,
there's something to this that I try and go into by way of Carl Gustav Jung and his active imagination, but even more so through Henry Corbin's imaginal faculty. So I'm using a sort of scholarly, psychological, comparative, religious uh, development of this idea that actually explains how to understand most mythologies, the ones that are cosmogonical, I would say, and cosmological, not the ones that talk about, Little Red Riding Hood and her pet fox. These are much more regional, they're much more specific. Sure, there are universal elements about them, sure. But they're
Right.
very specific. The cosmogonical stuff, how the cosmos was created, how the gods were created, how everything kind of what is the story of the soul? Those myths are they all of them have attendant philosophical or quote unquote esoteric interpretations that are not modern. They go back like 1800, 2000 years. They've been interpreting myths as something bigger than just stories, bigger than just fantasy, particularly the cosmogonical ones and the epics. And so, in that sense, what we see in things like mythography and mythopoesis, which is myth making, and what we see in initiation and working in magic, working in vision, working in contemplative divination, is that the imaginal faculty is something we normally think of as fantasy. That's one way to use it. It's one aspect of it, right? But at a certain point of training, this is one of the things initiatory societies seek to do. At a certain point of training, you learn to use the imaginal faculty as an instrument of spiritual perception. So you're actually cognizing, you're able to grasp something that actually doesn't have a form, but it uses your imagination to express in whatever way possible its essence through form. And those forms become visions, music, paintings. They become, in the case of mythologies, symbolic narratives. Okay, symbolic narratives. Narrative with a that is it's a bunch of symbols put together like a vocabulary to tell a story, a formula. Okay, so
Mhm.
that's yeah, I mean, after a spiritual or experience, after initiation, after an awakening, sure, that's how you when there is that component to movies, and you can almost draw it out universally because, right, there's only so many stories we can tell, and all of them
Exactly.
have that little bit of universality to it. But the big
Exactly.
ones, the epics, the cosmogonical myths, and a lot of Nolan's other films that people would I talk about, like The Dark Knight, is one of the best examples of a
Oh
film
yeah.
that, and it's
Yeah.
not because it's like, mid 2000 bro culture. It's because if you listen to what that movie says and what is going on, he's communicating something quintessentially religious, which is the interplay of light and dark that can never overcome each other. Okay, and
Hmm.
and here's the thing, think of the yin and the yang. A little bit of light in the dark, a little bit of dark in the light. Okay, Batman. He does good, but he's a fucking psychopath. He's very dark. He's not like Superman. He's not wearing red, white, and blue, and he's Boy Scout. This is a dark man, but he does good. The Joker, an evil man, but he makes you laugh. Okay, there's a dark in
Mm.
the light, light in the dark, and there's a point in the movie when Joker said, he's like, I don't want to kill you. I couldn't exist without you. You complete me. And
Exactly.
then the
Yup.
the penultimate moment is when he says, I think you and I are destined to do this dance forever.
I
And
love that scene.
so
Yeah.
Nolan is a fucking mythographer, this guy. He's really, it's all craft, all craft.
Hmm.
So I put that in the book. I put that, unfortunately, the Odyssey came out after I submitted the book, so
Oh, I love that though. I featured that in one of my videos that I'll have to share with you, since we're only just getting to start to know each other and chat. But many years ago I made a video about the Dark Knight and how to me, it came out during a Saturn and Uranus alignment. And under the 2009 like Obama election, which was very Aquarian. And so that you and I are tied together, the chaos and order, that Saturn and Uranus, man. I was like blown away by the the kind of the cosmo you say cosmo I'm sorry, the word you're
cosmogony,
using,
yeah. Or
cosmo,
you
yeah,
just you can call it cosmogenesis.
the cosmogenesis there. But yeah, like that was one of those things where as I'd stepped onto the path and I was aware of astrology and watching film and going into the theater, I was like, whoa, this is like cosmic, and
Absolutely.
man, I love that scene. I'll have to send you the Aquarian video that I highlight that scene in because it really is like it's when someone transmits cosmic information like that, like it is beautiful,
Yeah.
it really is like that's why it shines and it hits, like so yeah, definitely shout out to that film.
Well, what about you? Have you watched anything recently that's had those experiences for you?
Yeah, to be honest, man, I was really touched by The Back Rooms, which is a really uncomfortable film to watch, obviously. Like it's meant to be a kind of claustrophobic film and all that, but no more claustrophobic than Alice in Wonderland and all that. But man, that was a banger because apparently it was made by a young guy and it's, the whole Back Rooms is in my opinion, it came from the internet, right? The Backrooms is an internet phenomenon where people just started finding images of these back rooms like haunting these liminal spaces. And then people, I guess, it started hitting the unconscious, and people were like, "Whoa, these back rooms are places that I dream of." And to me, this is like very symbolic of like our collective unconscious and the unexplored back rooms. You know what I mean? And and very much like how the culture that we lived in, that we have lived in before the internet and stuff, it really didn't give us access to the back rooms. You know what I mean? Like we until Carl Jung became an accessible resource to the modern mind, we didn't have the language for the back rooms or the collective unconscious,
Yeah.
and so that movie really hit for me. And there's a ton of incredible depth to the fact that it came out during cancer, and I can't even go into the depth of the rich symbolism that I found in it. That might just be me, though. You know what I mean? I don't know what this director intended to pour into it, but it poured out of the unconscious, I think. You know what I mean? And it hit. But what's beautiful is that, dang, I guess this is going to be a spoiler. So are you planning on watching it or?
Um, I mean, now that you're talking about it, yeah, but I'm not the type of guy that like is bothered by spoilers, truly.
Okay, well, I do want to celebrate it, I guess, just because it really was quality that um I won't give away the amazing stuff that happens in between, but at the end of the film, there's a group called Async that rescues this person that was lost in the back rooms. And that person was making their way out of the back rooms with the help of their therapist, whose name was Mary, which I thought was beautiful and an allusion to like Sophia and wisdom. But it's async, this group called async to me, which this points to how like a synchronicity can be what draws you out of the back rooms of the unconscious and those empty back rooms where you think that like you're not a part of the magic of this whole world all the time. You know what I mean? Like the empty back rooms to me is like it represents the unexplored depths of the soul and all that, and like
Yeah.
so something about this group called Async rescuing this person through the help of like Mary and stuff, I was like, man, this is if they didn't write this way, it's so beautiful that the unconscious spills it out this way. You know what I mean? But I gotta say that movie was really beautiful and it was made by apparently like a very young director and like the content of the film comes pretty freshly from the minds of like the times that we're in. And I think that's a beautiful thing about that the moment we're in culture right now, it feels like culture used to really, power used to be held a lot more up top and in the age groups. And now with all this, technology and young people hitting the infrastructure of art, media, and everything, like finally, like young voices are coming out more in film too. And I think it's kind of cool to see what the young unconscious, is like spilling out for people. So I definitely recommend that one. I thought it was cool. And um, as like I said, as a person who like always I'm not always about consuming culture. You know what I mean? I think it should be done carefully. And I think that's kind of like the part of the purpose of this podcast is to help us all like, step into like more awareness, you know what I mean? And more like active awareness and integration of stuff. And so I wanted to talk to you a little bit about like Freemasonry and stuff
Okay.
because Freemasonry is something that, I first petitioned in 2010. And then I never, it was a monetary thing at that time. I was kind of like, dang, I couldn't afford to jump right in. There was like some kind of with the petition something, and I was like, I need a little time. I don't know, and it was just not the time, for me.
Mhm.
Um, but I went on and continued along my own path. But I've been being called to Freemasonry, as time goes on, and I've been a student of Manly P. Hall, and a lot of even Mark Stavish has done really great stuff on Masonry lately, and but I wanted to talk to you about Masonry because I feel like it's a really beautiful tradition, and I don't know if I know you're a historian. Are you also a Mason as well, or are you
Oh
a
yeah, yeah, yeah,
historian? Yeah, yeah.
yeah. And yeah, I was made a Masonic historian by the worship one, the one of the past worshipful masters of my lodge. Um, I've done on Arcanum, I did a two-part series called What is Freemasonry that addresses a lot of the bullshit. Um, and really more so than just addressing the bullshit, it's kind of like really the give a sense of like what masonry is. I think one of the things like it's getting to the point where like the anti-Masonic furor is really it's becoming rabid again in the United States. And there's all sorts of reasons for that. The primary one being this kind of propaganda that is constantly pumped out through the media mouthpieces that are in alignment with American evangelical Protestantism.
Right.
And I like to say that you can't spell evangelical without evil. So, don't get me wrong. I mean, I consider myself a Christian, but I don't,
Yeah,
I more in the esoteric sense. I don't,
same.
it's just these people are beyond fucked. I'd rather hang out with a Satanist, because at least they're fun,
Oh,
like, so it's one of those, and I live in the Baptist belt now, right? I moved from Long Island, New York to North Carolina. So it's a little different where I'm at, but, it's, I try to explain and give the situation. The fact that there's no, for instance, for anybody that's curious on what I'm talking about, is like masonry in the United States is completely decentralized. There's no HQ. Okay. The
Mhm.
Scottish Rite, like, and for anybody that might be out there, Scottish Rite brother, with all due respect, I mean, it's true. If you came into my lodge as a 33rd degree Mason and you told me to make you a cup of coffee, or this is what Masons should believe, I could very respectfully tell you to go fuck yourself and you wouldn't have recourse because there is no vertical movement in Freemasonry after the third degree. There is only horizontal movement. The York Rite and the Scottish Rite, no matter what they think they are, they're side quests. They're
Yes.
sequels to further explain this stuff. It's not this all of this shit about the 30th. You don't know about the 33rd degree. No, that's like your neighbor calling himself the king of the mayor of the town. And then well, you come to my house. That's not the fucking mayor. And you say, well, you don't know because you don't, he doesn't talk to you. You don't live with him. It's like, no, I know for a fact this guy's not the fucking mayor. He can say whatever he wants. It's the same thing with the Scottish Rite, particularly the Southern jurisdiction, because the Southern jurisdiction is the one that worships Albert Pike, who he's the reason I won't join the Scottish Rite. 'Cause,
Mhm.
but anyway, it's Freemasonry is an expression of uh Freemasonry is an expression of the mystery traditions in some sense. It is the most rudimentary of the ones that I have been a part of. However, it has the best infrastructure. So, for instance, when you say there was a money issue, good, because and I experienced the same thing at first, okay? But Freemasonry is able to provide wonderful things for its initiates in terms of beautiful places to do ritual,
Mhm.
aid when we really need it from each other, okay, and to have dinners, to have all sorts of things. Because if you're going to be a Mason, you got to financially have your shit together. That's a great
Mhm.
thing. I run the North Carolina Temple of the Golden Dawn with two other chiefs. It's like people come to the Golden Dawn, they don't have their shit together. They're trying to actually get like a get out of life free pass where it's like, oh, make me a
Mhm.
Magus so I don't have to fucking balance my bank account. And it's like, well, that's not really what this is. Whereas Freemasonry has a built in kind of like, stop, you may not pass any further. with then you need to see that they need to see that you're financially stable, not because they're going to
Hmm.
be using your money for anything other than like making a beautiful experience for you in Freemasonry and other brothers. So it's very rudimentary. It's very earthy, right? They have,
Hmm.
there's now Freemasonic lodges are people. They're not buildings. Okay. The
Hmm.
temple is the building. The lodge is the people. And so each individual lodge, and what I said earlier, no, it's completely decentralized in the United States. The highest authority in any state is the state Grand Lodge. That's it. There's no higher unifying authority, quote unquote, in Freemasonry. Okay, it's completely, and they all have little agreements to acknowledge each other. That's how it works. Okay, it's called amity. All right, and so each lodge is in its own region, in its own jurisdiction, in its own state, in its own neighborhood. Okay, so each lodge is going to have its own culture. So even in terms of Freemasonic culture, it's completely there's no homogeneity. It's
No.
very, very different. There are only certain things that define Masonry. Okay, that is being of lawful age, being a man, and believing in a higher, professing belief in a higher power. Okay. Now, those are the three things that require you to become a Mason in the United States. All right. Now, there are other things where women are getting involved and they're receiving recognition. I think that's very good. I don't need everything to become co-ed, and women don't need male Masons' approval to hold their own Masonic meetings. I'm all for women only Freemasonry, men only Freemasonry, and a co ed Freemasonry. And nobody's above or better than the other, but men need spaces to be with other men without any interference, without any. And yes, I'm calling it interference because we need to, one of the biggest reasons why like healthy masculinity is on such a decline is not because of an absence of women. Most of us don't have fathers. Okay, that's the fucking problem. Okay, because they're not good examples of men. Okay, so we need good examples of men. There are wonderful things that I have only ever learned through women. I grew up in a house with my grandmother, my sister, and my mother. I'm married very happily to a wonderful woman. She's my wife. We've been with each other for numerous years. I've learned incredible things from them. But there are certain
Hmm.
things that only a man can teach me. There are certain things only a man can teach me. All right, and one of those things is, or several of those things are tied into my own sense of being a father, husband, son. Okay, women balk at this. A lot of women balk at this, and the thing is, like, well, let me give you a comparison. What would you do if I told you that what femininity was? That I know because I'm a man. I know
Hmm.
because I'm a man, because I'm not you. Here's what femininity is. You would probably walk away in disgust, and that would be taking it easy. Okay, so the double standard there is absolutely outrageous. So it's not this necessarily this exclusionary thing for the sake of exclusion. It's men, we need to come together. We need to be with each other now more than ever. And Freemasonry was the last esoteric organization I joined because I didn't think it was balanced since it didn't have the feminine component. Now I realize the benefit of Freemasonry and specifically the variety that is male only. I need that, you know, total relaxed, open, you know, just there, that presence in my masculinity with other men to teach me, give me your wisdom. You're an elder. Okay, and you're younger than me. Well, now I can give you my wisdom and I can help you with something. And the older men, they need people to give their wisdom to. So
Yeah.
those are the great things about Freemasonry. The Golden Dawn, you get the esotericism. The Golden Dawn, you get, Martinism. You get the way of the heart. That's a beautiful tradition, especially if you're into esoteric Christianity. Uh, there's all sorts of wonderful things you can do that are highly esoteric. Freemasonry is not one of them. Okay, it has all the bones, but it depends. It's luck of the draw with lodge culture. Is the lodge that's near you the one that you can actually go to? Do they care about esotericism? I say that it doesn't really matter. I say that all you got to do is you got to go hang out with them and feel like is this a good culture for me? Can I thrive in this environment? Now, that doesn't mean that they need to be doing things that you 360 degrees approve of and agree with, right? Because part of initiation is you shouldn't completely resonate with the system. Otherwise, you have nothing to fucking learn there. Why would you come to the? Why are you looking for a system that resonates with you? If you're seeking initiation, which means you go from a neophyte to an adept, So it's why would you think like, oh, this feels right? It shouldn't feel right. You shouldn't get it. You shouldn't understand it when you come to it. And this was the thing for me, really, when I stepped into Freemasonry, humbled me. I was a temple chief in the Golden Dawn and an adept and all this stuff. And then what am I doing? I'm cleaning dishes. It's great. I love it. It was perfect because my ego was inflated. It's a real danger.
Mm.
And then you start working with the men. We, have blood drives. We bring food and clothes to the veterans home. I mean, there's constant forms of charity, forms of solidarity. And this is a chance for you to take all that spiritual education, all that esotericism, and do something good with it. And when we combine together with resources in community and solidarity, the goodness has a bigger reach. We can do
Totally.
more. So in that way, Freemasonry excites me. Freemasonry has changed my mind, and it's changed my life.
That's so cool to hear, and it's really amazing to be able to have this conversation with you tonight. Because I recently repetitioned local lodge and met some other brothers just by synchronicity, of course. Right away as soon as I had petitioned and met some other brothers that had recently petitioned. I hadn't met them yet, but then when I met, they were like, "Oh, I just petitioned that lodge too," and it's really cool because when I've been talking to my friends in culture, in art, music, underground community, you know what I mean? People wonder about like, what is esoteric stuff? What is this like initiation stuff? The stuff that you've been about and stuff. And when I've tried to relate this to my punk friends, I've been like, yo, like Freemasonry, it was kind of like punk houses on a new land that like people went and they set up these punk houses and they were like, yo, we can be free to develop, higher ideals here and have community here. And that's kind of what punk has always been. These basements that we went to shows in, these like DIY spots we went to in our youth, those are kind of lodges, and I've been talking about that recently as I've even been talking to some other Masonic brothers that are in the hardcore scene here too, and it's beautiful because I realized that like I've in lodges there's circumambulation, you know what I mean, and like to me it's a really special thing to talk about is that like in life like we all circumambulate something, even if it's just the Christmas tree every year, the gifts that like our families center around and the lives that we live that produce a wonderful year, you know what I mean. And so when I think about Masonic lodges and I think about punk houses and I think about these little punk communities that we have in these like spaces, um, to me, it really feels all part of this like very same like manifestation of goodwill, community, and the organization of like humanity toward like the celebration of what is, but then also like goodwill and stuff. Like I do a lot of punk shows here in Kingston and I almost always try to have mutual aid involved if I'm doing some kind of nightlife thing, because I'm like, let's support the touring bands for sure, but let's also like let's make sure we're taking care of the local people too, and there's always something locally to be looking out for. You know what I mean? Like uh, places are changing rapidly. Gentrification is real. There's communities that need support pretty much anywhere that there's action happening here, and so what I love about Masonic lodges and what I love about punk shows and all this stuff is that like it's the arrangement of men, women, whatever they them's like people come together, they formulate spaces that are healthy to like celebrate the principles that like make life make sense, you know,
Yeah.
and we keep making life make sense, you know what I mean? And like that's something that like I've always loved about punk and about music and art and about initiation and having a church community or a lodge or and I just recently started a little kind of spiritual study group that's like twice a month in New Paltz, and I just share stuff from about the tarot, and I have guest speakers. I just had Isaac from
Isaac,
Plant
love
Cooning.
that guy. Yeah.
Yeah, that was so awesome to get to hang with him. And just similar with talking to you, it's like I feel like I'm starting to meet these brothers that I just haven't been talking to, in a while and stuff. And it's cool just to see like what every individual is doing on their own path to like manifest beauty and manifest like meaning and culture and stuff.
Yeah.
And yeah, so I'd love anytime in the future, if you're ever coming through New York, please come on through to New Paltz and do a lecture, that'd be really cool. And I do want to like say that like, as I approach Freemasonry and other stuff, it's really great to have like voices, from a similar culture, who have come to Masonry and what you were saying about gender before too, that I actually resonated with. That was also my hesitation with Masonry, was about the dividing of gender. But any of us who enter the esoteric and enter self knowledge, duality is real. You know what I
Yes.
mean? Like,
Yeah.
and our dual bodies, whatever we choose to call them and how we relate to them, it's fine, but it's real. But I think, for me too, I've been connecting, I have like a part indigenous heritage, and I've also been trying to integrate like some of that kind of lost similar like tradition and ritual. And I'm finding that it's all the same, obviously. You know what I mean? It's incredible the four directional spirituality of indigenous practice and the magic circle and everything we do. You know what I mean? And so, and what's funny is when you listen to indigenous voices about how they do their lodge culture, there is men's ritual and there's women's ritual and there's sacred space for that. You know what I mean? And as a person who's like present in this time that we live in, is very aware of all the complications of gender roles and gender identity and all the things that like we all struggle with in these times, like um I do want to say that there is a sacred thing to duality that I think is valid to explore. And I think we should all explore it in ourselves, however that is, whether that's ritual and our, divided parties or whatever it is. But celebrating duality is a beautiful part of understanding unity. You know what I mean? And
Yeah, well, I mean, even at the biological level, most things, okay, so like, if you look at even the way that enzymes work, right? And there's what's called a lock and key mechanism. So and this is just one example of duality and how, the perfection of nature and the way that almost everything, all the way down to the cellular level, has a lock and a key, and they fill each other out. And so then when these two things come together, you have a whole, you have a reaction. Okay. And so to me, when I look at the role of, and this is traditional, but it's also biological. And so when I look at the role of my biological interface with the world, I see that I am effectively incomplete without some relationship with a woman. However, I need to serve the purpose. You know what I'm saying? In that dynamic, the role, I should say. I need to serve. And so, how best to exemplify and serve the role that you were created? If I have a chair, I need two front legs, two back legs. Okay, I need those back legs to be the back legs. They can't move forward, otherwise the chair falls apart. So in this relationship of male female, this coming together of these exterior roles, or even in the person, in an individual, we men have a female aspect. We talk about the yin and the yang, right? There's
oh,
a little bit of that in there, but you know we need to be able to embody the role in whatever way needs to happen so that the union is stronger for it. The union is stronger for it. And this context, what I'm specifically talking about here is exactly what you're talking about, men's initiation and women's initiation. That's what I'm specifically talking about. Now, as a heterosexual man, I have a wife, and so my job is not to sit around and be more like the way my wife wants me to be. My job is to become a better man. I become a better back leg, front leg, whatever it is, because if I don't do that, then I am not serving the purpose of the union that I claim to want to have happen. So it's initiation in a big way serves that role in men, right? Rites of passage, right? Mircea Eliade, he would call it the puberty rite, the puberty ritual that introduces you, male, female, into these not gender roles, but the fullness of your power. Why? Because your sexual energy is now active. That's not just a physical thing, that is a fucking magical thing. When your sexual energy turns on, you become a battery of magical power. If you don't use that correctly, we're going to have problems. And so initiation serves the purpose on so many levels: exoteric, physical, mundane, societal, but also magical. Okay, I'm
Hmm.
teaching a course right now on the magic of Dion Fortune. It's a 10-week course. Okay,
I
her
love the
main
envelope.
thing, yeah, her main thing was polarity magic. And like, look,
Exactly.
these energies need to go somewhere, and where they need to go is together. And
Exactly.
the difference between her and Crowley, and they got along well, her and Crowley
Hmm.
actually.
Yeah, yeah.
But the difference between her and Crowley is that Crowley, he, in many senses, and obviously he was a man who changed over time, like me, like everybody
Mhm.
else. His opinions changed, but he certainly at a particular point encouraged people to excess, whereas Dion Fortune was just trying to get them out of prudery.
Wrong.
And so her whole thing was like, we need to remove the stigma of sexual energy without becoming obsessed with it.
Exactly. Yep.
And so to this end, she was like, listen, everything I'm saying now is stuff I've put into practice from her teachings, where
Hmm.
it's like just becoming more of what you are. And instead of, the meeting the chemistry is there when the masculine, the feminine, the two parts of the duality that comprise the whole, when they meet, that chemistry is what's going to set the literally going to catalyze the reaction. But um you know uh you've got to be a developed sort of example of what you are. Now, I know that gets into all sorts of complications in terms of political correctness and identity politics and things like this. But you can do that in your selfhood too. Like Dion Fortune has this idea that the biological interface of a man on the earth plane is more active and stimulating and sort of like positive, not in a value judgment sense, but in like the positive and negative poles of a battery. But
Forceful. Yeah, really. Yeah.
on the astral or emotional plane, we're receptive and passive, and a woman needs to stimulate a man to feel his emotions. And then
Precisely.
so there's all these, you talk about the planes of existence. This is the planes of existence. So it's
Yeah.
we both have, right, like masculine, feminine, feminine, masculine, masculine, feminine, feminine, masculine. You come together and you have a whole profile. So this
Wrong.
is all of that exists in the person, and you can, regardless of how you identify in terms of your biological interface, you can do that work in yourself too.
Exactly, exactly. And thank you so much for it because that's exactly what I think really needs to be like celebrated in this time of there's a lot of people come into magic and there's a lot of gender discussion, you know what I mean? But grabbing a hold of the nature of duality, the polarity, the and whatever, the gender, the god, the goddess, we can all interface with these dualities as necessary. And what I think is really beautiful is that when whatever we are, men, women, whatever polarity, what you call that, positive, negative, yin yang, when those come together, it's really beautiful because they transform each other. And that's what's so beautiful about alchemy and about, that it's that alchemical marriage that like um it's really important for a feminine thing to be feminine, a masculine thing to be feminine. And then when they come together, they impress upon each other and they give birth to the understanding of the transcendent other. You know what I mean? And that's what's so beautiful about no matter what polarity union you're in, when you're in that with somebody and you're creating love and beauty together through understanding and you're fulfilling your roles, strongly together, whatever you are, that polarity magic, when you grab a hold of it and you know it, it produces beauty and it produces that transcendent thing that like releases us all even from worrying about gender dynamics and all,
Yeah.
you know, these things, you know what I mean?
Yes.
And that's the beauty of magic and alchemy and those things and even joining things like Freemasonry to kind of to assist along the way of like becoming a better lover of the world. You know, that's how I look at magic, you know what I mean? And I feel like that's what's beautiful about Freemasonry and about any tradition that has like given attention, you know, to this beautiful union we have with the world and tried to like um formulate balance, you know, that balance is so key. You know
Yeah.
what I mean?
Yeah,
And
yeah, and that is right. I mean, that's the law of nature. The whole thing is what we can refer to as homeostasis in the body, but also what we can refer to as dynamic equilibrium in nature, right? Because nothing's ever static. Nothing can be said. That's why everything's so confusing and complex here. Right, the bookshelf behind me, this thing looks like if you tried to move it, it's not going anywhere. But we know that the molecules that comprise this thing are moving at a speed so fast it only appears solid to us, okay? So nothing is actually static. So equilibrium actually ends up not being like this up the middle pillar. It ends up being like this up the middle pillar, okay? And now people who are prone to extremes will do this up the middle pillar. And then the whole thing is like, as an initiate, how do I widen that sine wave? And what happens if I take my original flow and I turn it horizontally, right? What's this in a sine wave musically? The big peaks, big valleys, it's a low note. What's this? It's a higher note. What's it all predicated on? Vibration. So in like this weird new agey way that I hate, but it's true, you're when you have less margin of extremity, you're actually raising the vibration. That's actually what's going on.
yeah.
You are raising the vibration. It's a higher note. The lower peaks and valleys of the sine wave. So really, and this goes all the way back to the ancient Egyptians. It goes all the way back to the Platonic tradition. It's throughout the Hermetic tradition. Certainly in the Golden Dawn. Certainly in the Golden Dawn. All it's about is fucking balance yourself.
Right.
Balance. Just get right in balance. Find the middle road. That's
Right.
it.
It's so, yeah. And dude, that's like, you know, a big thing for me is like I've been really attracted to Mot, you know, the Egyptian goddess Mot, you know, like it's a big thing for me. Like it was started very young with some synchronicity stuff, and I've like just continued to just pay close attention to my association with Mott. You know what I mean? And like, um, and there's something to me about Mott that's like coming back. And it's like it has to do, I think, even with the stuff that we're talking about, like this kind of like, um, you know, because she represents like the primary cosmic order, the cosmic law, balance. You know, like she is that archetype, like that prime archetype of the mother of all things, but also the upholder of balance, you know? And yeah, that's just it's been a really big archetype for me. Like in a lot of the video work, I'll share some links with you, you know, that but a
Yeah,
lot of the
sure.
video work I've done in the past 20 years, it traces like Mott influence through pop culture. Like I was saying, the way I look at films and I kind of extract these little, you know, esoteric gold from it, you know. I see Mott in a lot of things, you know what I mean? And like, and I feel her um in the world a lot. And maybe it's just because I'm connected to like primary archetypes as somebody who's like, you know, focused on magic and all these things,
Yeah.
but do you have a relationship with Mott yourself, as we were just talking about balance and that cosmic principle? Like, would you say that Mott in the Golden Dawn or Masonry or your own vibe, is that something important to you? Or
Yeah, of course.
yeah,
Well,
yeah.
first of all, let me say I see the J. Augustus Knapp plate from Manly Palmer Hall's Secret Teachings of All Ages over your shoulder of Isis, right?
Of course.
I'm pretty sure the pedestal she's on is I, Isis, am all that is, all that ever was, all that ever will be. No man hath ever me unveiled, right? That's what that
Hmm.
says. That's
Yeah.
that. So I use
So,
I use that. Yeah, exactly. I use that as a meditative image early on in my practice. The Secret Teachings of All Ages was the first esoteric book I ever read.
Yeah,
But
really for me too.
yeah, and I used to have to stick it in a backpack. Like I'd have my backpack open like this on my lap on the subway in New York City at like
Mhm.
2 in the morning, and I'd have to like reach so nobody could see. Now it's like it would be cool to do it. Back then
Right.
it was not cool to be reading Manly Palmer Hall on the fucking subway in New York. But
Yeah.
Mott is she's a central figure in the Golden Dawn. Absolutely. She's literally the hegemon. She's the Egyptian god form that the adepts on the dais are projecting onto the officer of the hegemon, and the station of the hegemon is Ma'at. Okay,
No
she's
way.
she's in the middle of the hall, right? And then she's got the Stolistes and the Dadukos, which are, for anybody that doesn't know, the person with a cup of water and the person with the incense of fire, and they consecrate and they purify and consecrate the hall in sync. They have to be in perfect synchrony as they go around looking at each other. What's that? Those are the arms of the scales. And Ma'at
Yeah.
is in the center, and she stands there and she leads the candidate. Why? Because where's the candidate ultimately going? Between the fucking pillars. You're led by the concept of order to balance in the Golden
Yeah.
Dawn, okay? Like
Yeah.
Ma'at
Yeah.
is the main thing there. And now what people don't
Yeah.
understand is that the neophyte ritual of the Golden Dawn, the God form work, what you're not seeing is the Hall of the Dead. You're being judged. Okay, it's the weighing of the heart ceremony. When you are outside being wrapped up and and hoodwinked and get ready to be brought into the temple, somebody inside is taking four elements off of the altar and moving them to the quarters. That is you being osirified. And then
Yeah.
you being wrapped and bound and hoodwinked is you are being mummified. And you're brought in, and the first thing that you're called is inheritor of a dying world. Okay, they bring you in. They all of this stuff goes on. We've got the 42 assessors and the invisible stations. We're visualizing all this stuff. The canopic gods of the sons of Horus in the quarters. It's all this is all published. Okay,
Yeah. Yeah.
but this is your training. You have to learn how to do all that. You have to prove you can do it to sit on the Hierophant's throne. And so, this was ages ago for me at this point, but it's still probably my favorite part of the Golden Dawn. Now, this is the whole thing is becoming justified, which means balance.
Yeah.
In Freemasonry, we have something different. We have the four cardinal virtues, right? Wisdom, courage, or wisdom, yeah, prudence, courage, temperance, and justice. And so you've got some things there because justice and temperance are kind of the Freemasonic embodiment, and they're all feminine. They're the Freemasonic embodiment of Ma'at, of universal order and truth. Now, what's really interesting about the Hall of the so in something like the Book of Coming Forth by Day, in certain translations, you actually don't. It's not called the Hall of Ma'at, meaning the Hall of Truth. That where the heart is weighed, the weighing of the heart ceremony that in the neophyte ritual of the Golden Dawn is supposed to be taking you through. It's actually called, instead of Mat, it's called Meiti, okay, which is something interesting, and people can chew on this. And that form of Mat, of truth, actually the literal translation is not you have entered the hall of truth. The weighing of the heart in the hall of truth is the weighing of the heart in the hall of two truths,
Yes. Yes. Yeah.
which is quite interesting there too. There's more balance to
Exactly.
to sort of to wrap your head around. So that's kind of for a while it was a koan for me. So I'll leave that there. But yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
Ma'at is huge.
Wow, it's so cool because like I told you like I early on I came up when I was like 18 reading Israel Gardi. I spent a little time reading some Golden Dawn self-initiation material, but like I said, I eventually ended up in the AA lane or whatever. But what's amazing about this though is that like I'll have to share with you my videos that I've collected over the years with this initiatory lens that I've put on film for a long time. I
Uh-huh.
have a series called Film a Thin Skin or Membrane. And you know what
Nice.
I came, that's the Britannica definition of a film. It's a
Yeah.
thin skin membrane, you know.
Yeah.
And then I think about it, we call it the silver screen, and silver is the color of the moon, the astral light, you know what
Mhm.
I mean? And so then what we do in film but a projection of this astral light into some menstruum, and then when we collectively all get together and we like open this portal, through
We
film.
do. That is a
Yeah.
great way of putting it. It like think about it, right? There's not even a person there. It's a fucking screen. And it's not even natural. Like when you sit, if you were to sit in a play and somebody's over here on the left side of the stage and somebody enters from the right, and what would happen is when you heard them enter and talking, your eyes would naturally move from the person who was just speaking to find that person there. In film, there is not, it's just constant cuts, 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 cuts. It's so why is it that you're able to sit there in a chair looking at a screen with all these weird unnatural cuts and still when the character gets hurt, you cry? How is it that it has such immediate access to have us, to like hold us, put the blinders, we're there with them in this world? It's because exactly what you're talking about. And I think that's a brilliant way to conceive of that I've never even thought of.
Well, that means a lot to me to hear from you because to be honest, like everything I've been seeing you do and even just like the bit I've seen you talk about with mythology and stuff, I've been like, word, this homie's on some stuff that I'm seeing, you know what I mean? And like but that's been the gist of my entire kind of contribution to this field that we call synchro mysticism. It's me and this uh fella Jake Coetzee, really great mind. You should check out his work. He's incredible. I think you'll resonate with him deeply. He's done a bunch of great stuff. Sharing this like synchronicity perceived in film, archetypes moving through, this screen. And Jake and I have kind of developed like along with a handful of other people, this thing called synchromysticism, where we look at film as this reflection of the great self, you know what I mean? And we, for me, that was my angle, was that I was like, not only are we seeing archetypes dancing on these screens, but also like, this screen is it's a thin skin or membrane, and it's like a shared membrane to like the back rooms, you know what I mean? Like, and that's been like a big thing that I've really wanted to open up with my work with synchronicity and film, is that like I said, I'm not a huge fan of all this culture and manipulation, and what I find that's really beautiful about the work I've done for the past 20 years, like taking this gold out of film, is that like sometimes even the weirdest people making films for the weirdest reasons can't help the fact that like you can only employ God. And that like even when you're making weird films and you're trying to do what you think you're doing and there's like cosmic forces of time and spirit and everything moving through. And like I think even people who make some of these weird propaganda films, like there's stuff that comes out that's from the spirit in some, whether it's distorted, but
Yes.
um I'm really glad you resonated with that concept of the film as a membrane for me, though, because like um it has been pretty powerful for me to like to extract a lot from films. You look at like The Wizard of Oz, and the
Yeah.
initiatory journey, and of course came
Well,
from a theosophist,
there you
but
go.
I was like, I think one of the first person to point out, I was like, oh, y'all, Toto is serious. And
Yeah.
oh, I get this, you know what I mean? I'm like,
Yeah.
oh, that's Paraketh, you know what I mean? And
Well, here's a little bit of my podcast host and the general curiosity coming out. I want to ask you a question. I'm going to put you on the spot for a second.
absolutely.
Name the first that comes to mind in terms of your taste, your like what you prefer.
Mm,
If you can list a classic art house movie that you love, a surreal film that you love, a drama, and a comedy. So classic art house.
okay.
We're talking 60s, 70s,
Oh, I got, I
French,
got, I got
Japanese,
you. Yeah.
surreal, drama, and comedy. So four.
Okay, got you. Okay, so Art House, Holy Mountain, right? That
Oh
counts.
yeah, Jodorowsky.
Yeah, okay. That was like I was like, I forget what people call that art house stuff, but yeah, that he fits 60s, 70s banger. Okay, surreal, gotta go with David Lynch. Um Twin Peaks, I guess, man. That
Mhm.
I have a great video I gotta share with you about how it's called Twin Peaks is actually about you. Talking about polarity, the Twin Peaks, my man. You know what
Yeah, there you go. The
I
Black Lodge, the
mean?
White Lodge. Yeah, absolutely.
No, oh man, they go all in. You know, the dweller on the threshold, he's wild
Yeah.
with it. But um, but so drama, dang drama. I feel like I should hit something. It's like my least favorite genre. Like I don't often go
Yeah.
like I like all the trippy stuff, but what's a good drama?
See, this
Like
is
when
telling me
something
something
like,
about your personality.
yeah.
Nothing
Maybe my
bad.
heart
I'm
maybe
just,
maybe my heart's a little guarded, you know. But
it's just information. That's all.
yeah, yeah. No, I'm pretty obsessed with the surreal, the transcendent, you know what I
Okay.
mean?
Right.
And also the practical, the community and things like that. So like drama, I'm like, I was like, yeah, getting lost in your emotions is not always my biggest thing. But um,
Well, drama can be serious, right? I mean, it doesn't, yeah.
oh, okay. Dang. Okay, you're right. Drama is huge. So that's like not, I'm not just talking about, we're not talking emotional drama. We're talking about epic drama.
Yeah,
Okay.
like the genre, the film genre
Yeah.
of drama. Like for instance, I have the most fucking boilerplate Long Island half Italian answer, but I can't argue with it. It's true. The second Godfather is my favorite drama.
Okay, right on. Yeah, yeah. Okay, so drama like that. Yeah. I mean, dang. I feel like
You
I'm
want to
such a
skip to comedy first?
yeah, I'm so sorry. I feel like
All
I'm
right.
such a weirdo. I can't even think of a funny drama, but I will say I watched Pride and Prejudice with my partner at their or with my fiance at their folks' house a little while ago, and I thought it was really cute of a movie. As we were talking about that gender stuff, I was like, this is a cute courtship drama. Um so
Okay,
so
I'll
okay,
take
we'll
that
go with
one.
that. All
Yeah.
right, now let's go with comedy. So I feel like, man, Truman Show, I guess. Is that even a comedy? It's like a dystopian jammer, but
No, I would well, I would call that like I guess dramedy, but definitely comedy. It's Jim Carrey, you know. I mean,
right,
the only movie he wasn't funny in was Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind.
right. And that was a banger too, you know.
Oh, great. I
That's
watched that. I
Montauk.
rewatched that. I rewatched that with my fiance. It's great too because it's on Long Island, you know.
Yeah, speak about Montauk Project, go all
Yeah.
full circle with
Yeah.
it.
So off the top of my head, I would say classic art house for me, it would at right now is like Seven Samurai, right? Akira Kurosawa.
Mm, okay.
I watched that again like a month ago, and I'm like, I can't even understand how a movie this fucking long is still so fucking good. You know, like I
Mhm.
just like why it's too long, but I can't stop watching it. It's so good. Um,
Okay, I would dive in on that.
Surreal. I like the Lynchian stuff for surreal stuff. I also like Jim Jarmusch.
Oh yeah,
I'd even classify some of what Jodorowsky did, like more so like El Topo, but also parts of the Holy Mountain would be. I would take that as surreal. I want to say Limits of Control by Jim Jarmusch was a good one. Drama I gave you. Comedy, dude. This is so weird, but
yeah.
like literally, I laugh harder at like old Jewish humor than anything else in the world. Like Mel Brooks movies, like History of the World part one, and believe it or not, the Marx Brothers make me like cry laughing. So I want to say like
Oh,
either A Day at the Races or Duck Soup by the Marx Brothers. Those like
okay.
it's just I can't even control myself how much I laugh at that because it's
Wow.
just dumb. You know, it's just like completely absurd
So it's
stupidity.
it's that
And
cosmic purity, right?
yeah, and that's what I find funny.
Right. Well, that's a great. I'm definitely gonna have to check some of that stuff out because I feel like I came up seeing that stuff and like to me all that the Marx Brothers are it came off dumb, but now like somebody like you saying that it's like gets you gets going. I'm like okay, something must be there.
It's so funny. I don't the I hate intelligent humor.
Mhm.
Like, I literally just want like the dumbest possible stuff. But there's an intelligence in that. Like think of it for instance, right? I think one of the smartest shows that has ever been on TV, one of the smartest pieces of media that has ever been on TV. You got to be really intelligent to understand it. Is The Simpsons. Okay?
Oh yeah, yeah.
But why is Homer so funny? because he's so absurdly stupid. You know, like
Right.
that absurd stupidity to me is the funniest thing in the world.
Right. There's something, I was watching The Office the other day with my fiance, and they'd always been wanting to watch it with me, and I was always like, yeah, we'll check it out, and I've always thought it was funny, like when I caught it, but like, man, when I was watching that Steve Carell guy do his character on that show, he's playing a man who like just clearly doesn't deserve all the power that he has. You know what I mean? And I was like, my man, I was like, this guy kind of crucified himself with this role and just plays like a total like surrendered role to this like the image of like the average kind of capitalist boss who doesn't deserve the power they have. You know what I mean? And I was like, this show is brilliant. Like, and all these people are really doing a beautiful job of like both like opening up a beautiful space of celebrating office culture, but then at the same time like getting down a little bit what we find funny, right? That's what's amazing about humor and the jester in the court. Like the
Uh,
court of the world, and comedy in the sphere of our media and culture is like the way that like in these little spaces like the office where we criticize power and we play with the funny power structures in our lives, like we're actually also like we laugh because we are above like or we're because we're becoming above like accepting that. You know what I mean?
yeah,
And like we
yeah,
laugh because it resonates, and so that's it's something that I've always thought is really funny about media and stuff, as like I said, as a punk and a person who's like I'm dead set on trying to save the world in my lifetime, however I can.
yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
I
Well,
don't know about save the world, but starting with me and then also making sure that everybody along with me is also coming up, and you know what I
yeah,
mean. I'm, uh, I'm very like about fortifying myself, but also community always. You know what I mean? And
yeah.
like I think you probably resonate with that.
Yeah, I do. I do. So this is my take though on kind of the community project of uplifting
Mm,
is that you can only exemplify balance, um,
hmm.
and hope, pray that
Yeah.
by that balance, by that exemplification, the person will receive some kind of grace, some kind of light. Because the only reason we know that God, source, the absolute, whatever the fuck you want to call it, Zeus, the only reason
Hmm.
we know that God is good, the only thing that makes us be able to say we have a good God ultimately is that we have free will. That's the
Hmm.
only thing. That's the only thing. There's murder, there's blood, but we have free will. And that free will is unassailable. It's a divine law, not even your what we call your daimon, your higher divine genius in the Golden Dawn tradition. We don't call it the
Hmm.
holy guardian angel, it's the higher divine genius. Even that can only suggest to you what should and shouldn't be done because it cannot
Hmm.
interfere with your free will. So I think that the wise person respects the autonomy and free will of everyone around them, even if you
Hmm.
think what they're doing is potentially harmful to themselves or to the community. The only time you have the right to prevent somebody from exercising their free will is if their actions are going to prevent your own free will, meaning
Hmm.
you're in direct threat, they're going to kill you, rob you, kidnap you, these kinds of things. They're taking
True
away your free
self-defense.
will. But other
Yeah.
than that, and I'm not saying this to lecture you, I'm saying this for
Oh,
anybody
yeah.
that's listening. Is like my take. I'm hyper aware when I'm doing podcasts, even though I settle in and I'm like vibing with the person I'm talking to. I'm hyper
Mm,
aware that this is for an audience. So
yeah, yeah, yeah.
so um so it's there's I think that that's been something that the Golden Dawn path has taught me. And it's through that middle pillar way of understanding like you cannot no matter what you think is right or wrong in the Golden Dawn, and this is the last thing I'll say about it to put a fine point on it, in the Zelator degree, right? So you have the neophyte degree I told you about. It really, you don't know when you're going through it, but the adepts are doing the vision work, the god form work, the astral work to create the hall of Mot, and this is the weighing of the heart ceremony in the underworld. Okay. Then the next degree, the Zelator, you're brought through the pillars. Okay, but it's done in a very kind of strange way. The candidate is brought to the pillars and they're stopped. And the Hierophant says, let the candidate enter the pathway of evil. And then you automatically see on the candidate's face, like, oh no, what did I do? Like what did I just like bind myself to? Like, fuck. And so they go around, right? They go to the left, and they're met with an entity there who's played by a person, and they say, "You cannot come this way." And so then they go back to the middle. The Hierophant says, "Let the candidate enter the path of good." And the candidate says, "Oh, I knew it. I knew I made the right choice. I knew." And you go around to the right side and you're stopped. And they said, "Go back. You can't come this way." And they say, "Now let the candidate enter to the path that tends neither to the left nor to the right." And then you're barred at first, but the Hierophant comes and intercedes for you and says, "This is the way. This is the middle path is the way. Not the good, not the evil, because
Exactly.
they're
Yeah.
extremes. And
Right.
when you're at an extreme, evil becomes good and good becomes evil. So the only way to prevent yourself from becoming your antithesis, because think of this. How many of us, and ask yourself honestly if you're listening, how many of us have created identities that require what I don't like to even exist? The only reason this identity exists is because it's a reaction against what I don't like, and now I have tied myself to it indefinitely.
Yeah.
Okay, so to go through the middle pillar is the path of initiation, is the path of theurgy, is the path of development, and that requires that you understand that free will, even if people are using it for bad things, is fucking sacred and none of your business.
Mm. Wow. Yes. Preach, brother.
Oh,
I
I
really
will.
love it. Yeah, yeah. No, and it's beautiful to hear light shining from a similar quadrant. You know what I mean? Because
Yeah.
I, like I said, I also came up, studying Crowley and all that, and like I'm in a place in my life where like I've condensed a lot of what I've understood from my study of Crowley and all that, but like, the wisdom tradition of humanity is so much larger than one activated young man, you know what I mean? Now, however, like he provided some goods, we can get some stuff out of there and work with it, you know what I mean? And like to me, that's part of like what's cool about the time that we're in is that like everybody can kind of like with reason, with mott, you know what I mean, with balance. Take what you need from little pieces and places, but trust the places where the balance lives. You know what I mean? And like I think, I don't even want to speak to like thelemic stuff because I don't really have a connection to any thelemic organizations these days.
Mhm.
And all blessings to, everybody 93, whatever. But you know, I think that's like a beautiful path if people are called to that, whatever. But I'm
I have
excited
met, I
for
have met, I have met some of the most wonderful human beings that I've known that are on the Thelemic path because it's a living tradition. It's not just Crowley in a fucking in a glass
oh,
box somewhere. It's a living
no.
tradition.
Yeah. And dude, the Lima belongs to humanity, in my opinion. That word Crowley didn't make it up. All his words were borrowed. He's a borrowed body. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? And so we kind of, in my opinion, have to like um separate whatever the wheat from the chaff and the da da da. You know what I mean? And like I love what I've seen from folks like the shoemaker tradition in Thelema and some other folks like Lon Milo Duquette's done really great stuff.
Yeah.
I've
Sounds great.
when I visited the OTO lodges, had some great, lectures and stuff. And so, all blessings to modern Thelema and stuff too. Like I don't have not a connection to it for any reason. I
Right.
consider myself a Thelemite, but I'm also a Christian. I'm also a indigenous love lover of Mother Earth. And we're all many things. You know what I mean? All these like things are just words we put on top of love. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And so, but I think it's really cool, that people like you are out here utilizing your voice and your lived experience to channel people toward that balanced path. You know what I mean? Like I'm I'm at a point in my life and my spiritual development where I'm like, you know, I want to help point folks toward, if you're coming towards spirituality, you're coming to light, you're coming to mysticism or mystery, like I'm glad to point people in the direction of folks who have been putting in the work and doing good work to kind of celebrate that like um yeah, that balanced path and stuff. You know what I mean? Yeah, I really resonate with everything you're saying. So,
Thanks,
yeah,
dude. And like,
yeah.
there's a sincerity that you have with you that is, it's inspiring and it's wonderful to interact with,
Mm,
so, just keep doing what you're doing and really keep following whatever light is guiding you because there's a lot I'm telling you, and for anybody that's new to this stuff and is listening, like there is an almost discouraging amount of bullshit out there right now. And you're clearly somebody who's familiar with the tradition. You're clearly somebody who actually has an open curiosity for what is real, and you have a tremendous sincerity. And I really appreciate you sharing that with me. It's because it's fucking rare.
mm. Well, dude, yeah, like again, it means a lot to hear because, like, honestly, me starting this podcast and kind of coming back to podcasting and sharing my vision, my perspective, and even doing these little workshops I'm doing, and I'm going to be trying to open up some space to connect with people more in different ways, however that comes up. But it's cool to hear that encouragement, you know what I mean? Because I'm coming back to it honestly because the world got dark, man. Like all that weird last year, like the file stuff is coming out, and then you got everybody bugging out about secret societies and da da da, and it's like we got to bring clarity and yeah, for it, just like a real image of what this stuff is about, because there's a lot of people bugging right now about what's magic and who's this and what's that and Freemasons this, and everyone's scared that their town is like part of some dark stuff. I'm like, yo, don't worry, your town is part of a old conspiracy to keep you free and good. But and it's not like a conspiracy anymore. We're all humans. We collaborate. We create the world every day together. You know what
Yeah.
I mean? And I want to like just also create space for people to get out of their like paranoia and like negative scripts about reality and just like let's talk about the mystery. Let's dive into like whatever. So
Yeah,
I appreciate you sitting with me like this tonight. You know what I mean?
for sure, man. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, man. Well, is there anything before we wrap this episode? Any places you want to point people, anybody you want to shout out, whatever, before we
Well,
wrap it up?
when is this gonna air, you think?
I'm probably gonna work on editing tonight. I've only got that one little blip to cut, or yeah, but yeah, maybe tomorrow, unless you feel like you want
No,
to
no, no.
wait.
Well, just because so I know what to kind of talk about. So Friday, this Friday, which is July 24th, 2026, I am at 6 p.m. Eastern. I'm hosting a completely free open house event to everyone and anyone. Uh, in collaboration with Magical Retreats. So last October, I brought just under 20 participants through Upper and Lower Egypt on the ground. We did 9 days. I taught the history, theory, and practice of Greco-Egyptian theurgic magic. We did rituals on site in some of the oldest temples in the world. So now
Whoa.
in September of 2027, we're going to I'm hosting a retreat in the south of France for anybody that's interested in those traditions of Catharism, French Rosicrucianism, Templary, so on and so forth. We'll be going to places like Rennes-le-Château, right, where it was made famous by the Da Vinci Code, but also by Tool. They had that whole thing on their webpage for a while about the mystery of Rennes-le-Château and Berenger-Saunier. So we're going to be looking at some of those. We're going to be at Carcassonne, in the south of France. It's a very important, like one of the most important areas for the Western esoteric traditions. So we're doing a digital open house for anybody that might be interested in seeing how much the trip costs. Anybody that might want to come on this pilgrimage with us, and there will be practical magic taught and performed. There'll be a sort of a kind of very simplified initiatory experience that I'm going to give to everybody there. And it's limited to 6 participants. I think we actually already have one of those spots filled. So there's basically 5 participants spots open. So that's what's going on this Friday if anybody wants to hop in on that call and just hear about it. Other than that, I got a new book coming out called Esoteric Mythology. The Generative and Transformative Power of Imagination. That's the subtitle. It's coming out this November on Inner Traditions. And I've done a little bit of talking the beginning of this year, but it's starting September. I'm going to be on a very big book tour. I'll be up in New York on September 5th at Amityville Apothecary. I'm giving a workshop on how to create traditional sort of Greco-Egyptian style herbal and sort of natural talismans, things like stones, gems, that kind of stuff, working with the various natural materials, which is what they were doing, even in like quote unquote high magic of ancient Egypt. They were still using these natural materials that we'd see in something like field magic. So I'm going to be giving a workshop on that. The end of September, I'm going to be in Seattle giving some talks. The In October, I'll be in California, Philosophical Research Society, Adina Senton Research
Oh,
Library. Um, I'm going to be in the beginning of November. I'm going to be speaking at EnokiaCon. It's massive this year in Texas, Austin, Texas. The
whoa.
lineup is fucking insane. So
Mm.
definitely check that out. And then I'll be the rest of November. I'm going to be in Europe. I'm doing a 2-day retreat in Parma, Italy, with the La Società dello Zolfo, the Society of Sulfur. I'll be speaking at the Rittman Library in Amsterdam. I'm going to do one presentation myself. And the next day, I'm going to be doing a joint discussion with Professor Walter Hanegraaff from the University of Amsterdam. And then I'll be giving two talks in London at Watkins Bookshop and Atlantis Bookshop. So, for anybody that happens to hear that in any of those areas, check out my website. I've got the whole list of the itinerary on there. Feels like I'm on tour again, to be honest with you.
Yeah, right. Yeah, not much has changed, it seems.
Despite how I've tried, it's you got to go on the road and be a show pony no matter what.
Oh man, well, this has been a really cool chat, man. And yeah,
Thank
thanks for
you.
all your shared insight and your wise words and spending the time tonight, So to anybody who's listening, keep up with Ike, check out those resources he shared. I've got a bunch of great guests coming up, so stay tuned for more episodes of NSYNC. And I hope you have a blessed day, evening, whatever you're having today. Be well and see you soon. LVX.